All right, beautiful. Today is another great day. We would be doing a little revision on what we did yesterday before we continue right into what we have for the day. Just hold on. Yeah, so that was that. So we'll be looking at that. And this is about project cost management. For the work that should be carried out, there is a financial implication for every single activities which we have identified. And is expected of us to deal with them wisely so the project would be achieved within budget. And I told us yesterday that we have 4 sub-processes in project cost management, which includes the plan cost management, the estimate cost, determine budget, and control cost. Yesterday, we went on to the determine budget, and as soon as we talked about the S-curve, we called it a day. So today, we'll be starting off from there. But before that, let me give a little background of what we did. And when we say project cost management, it has to do with the processes involved in making estimates about the individual activities identified or defined in the project, aggregating them to form the budget of the project, and ensuring that this budget is controlled from the beginning of the project till the completion of the project. Everything we do within this terrain must be within budget. And yesterday we looked at the plan cost management as the very first thing we must do. What do we do in there? We ensure that we establish some policies, we come up with procedures and make documentations for the planning, the managing, the executing, and the controlling of the project cost, which is very, very important. Without these policies, we wouldn't know who is allowed to do what and who is not allowed. Haven't gotten this project cost management plan, which is the output of the plan cost management, we will start talking about making estimate of the individual cost using those policies which we have guiding ourselves. So when we make estimate of the individual activities as regards cost, we are developing an approximation of the monetary resources that is required to complete those activities that are found on the project. These activities, once we are done estimating their cost, we just do what is called aggregation. Aggregation is summing up, and that is for us to determine budget, and then we declare the budget of the project. Summing up the individual activities, rolling them up to the work packages, and establishing an authorized cost baseline. When that is being done, what is left is to move into the execution phase where the project can kick off. We now start doing all the buy-in, all the installations, all the execution. So at this time, we ensure that we stay within the plan budget. And that is where the control costs come in. Now, we want to monitor the status of the project to update the project budget and managing all those changes, both the wanted and the unwanted changes against the cost baseline. The cost baseline is the approved upon cost. That is the established budget. We must make sure we stay within. Yeah. So this is the little revision to bring us back into speed of what we did yesterday. These 4 things under the project cost management. We talked about the plan cost management. The plan cost management gives us what? An output of the cost management plan. We use the cost management plan to move into the next process, which is the estimate cost. We now start making all these estimates, and that taught us about 4 or 5 ways we can make estimates of activity cost. I talked about the analogous estimate, which has to do with the historical way, looking at previous projects and coming up with a speculation of how much an activity would cost. And I say the analogous estimate, which is an historical relationship between what we have in hand and what we've done in the past, would have a budget that is less accurate. And this kind of estimate is called the rough order estimate. I told us that. And I told us that when we want an accuracy, we now start thinking of what is called the parametric estimate, where we drag out our rulers and then we start counting numbers to say if it will take us $2,000 to get a piece done, how much would it take us to get 500 pieces done? We just do the multiplication, 500 multiplied by 2,000, and numbers can't lie. People here would agree with me that numbers can't lie. After 1 is 2. If numbers lie, which means there is a mistake. So we make that aggregation to have a budget. Once we have the budget, the work starts. So now let's move on to what we are supposed to be doing today. Today, I wouldn't want us to stay for that long. I know some of you would want to rest because of work. And it's always good we go straight into what we are supposed to do. So for what I've explained, I think nothing new is there, nothing difficult is there. All right, so let's move on to the S-curve. So we can now start talking about the S-curve. All right, take a look at this diagram. Take a look at this diagram. I explained it yesterday, but I want to start with it again. I said the cost baseline. You can see my cursor. For those of you that can see my cursor, you can see cost baseline showing the dark line that looks like S. You can look at the vertical axis, cumulative value is written in there. So the graph is the cumulative value against the time, which means as we move on from day 1 to day 2, day 3 of the project, what would be the cost value expended? If you take a look at it, you see the agreed upon budget, which is the budget at completion, BAC. You are seeing the BAC here at the right and top. It shows that this dark line at the BAC, which is the final activity that could have taken money out of our pocket, which is the completion of the final activity, rather, that could have taken money out of our pocket. So that shows that the BAC is the agreed upon budget. Yeah, she's welcome. Simone, you're welcome. Good to have you in here. Out of your busy schedule, you can make time to join us today. So we have the BAC here as the budget at completion, which means at the end of the project, this is how much we could have spent. That is budget. looking at this S-curve, is telling us the S-curve is speculating the financial requirements as we move on from day one. We are moving from point zero to point finish over time. Now, below the cost baseline, which is the S-curve, you can see a dotted line. If you are in a place where you can speak, can you kindly unmute, because I want to correspond with you to ensure that I'm carrying the class along. Are you with me? Okay, if he's very busy, who can kindly unmute? Who would want to correspond with me? Anybody can do that. It's just to say yes, yes, yes. I need to gear that because I think I'm in a difficult terrain. Okay, Simone. All right.
I can hear you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for
I can hear you.
volunteering. You're welcome too. So let's move on. You're looking at point zero.
I can hear you too.
Oh, good. If you at this point in time, I'm tempted to declare that you are the class rep, head of class. All right, that title has been bestowed upon, has been conferred upon you, if that's the right word. So I think after this class, you have to gather your family and celebrate this position. So now, taking a look at it, let's go back. You would see that we keep moving on as we keep taking down activities, we keep accomplishing activities, cost will be going up and up. We'll be spending money till the top, which is the BAC. So now this diagram is not showing the days per se, and it's not telling you how much we spend over the day on the right-hand vertical column, but that is what it means. Now, when you look at the diagram, you see that expenditures are low. Expenditure is the dotted line. Simone, can you see that? It's the dotted line below. It shows that in actual, what was spent is below what was planned for. The cost baseline is the budget that was declared. It was the budget that was planned for. Now the expenditure is below, right? That is, they are making savings over every buy, over every construction, over every activity completed. They are making savings. They made savings. The project was making savings until they got to this point where the dotted line, the real life expenditure, caught up with the cost baseline. That is the planned cost. That is the estimated cost. And all of a sudden, it went over. They started incurring costs. So this is what is called cost overrun. They had cost underrun in the beginning and went on where the cost crossed the cost baseline. When the cost in life actually crossed over, what do you think has happened? Which means they have started accomplishing a single activity with more than what was budgeted for. You see? Look at the end of the budget, the BAC, where the BAC is showing. This is the declared budget. But on top of, between the BAC, there is a column titled the management reserve. And for them to accomplish this other aspect that is way and over the plan cost, they would have to raise change requests. Management of change would come in, I don't know what you call it in your organization, they would have to request for more funds. Yesterday, someone asked, where is the contingencies now coming in? And I took my time to explain what that is and where it's coming in. Now, rather, I want to still tell us that at this point where they meet, it's okay. But when they cross, we need more money. Then somebody asked me, what about the savings? Can't they just take up that much they have saved from the beginning of the project and start using it here? Does that make sense? All right. Shouldn't they do that? Take how much you have saved in the beginning and now start covering the expenses, the additional cost. No, you're not going to chat. Somebody has to unmute. All right. Somebody has to unmute and correspond. You say, yeah, so I know why I'm saying that. I don't, in this kind of areas, people come back to want to ask me to explain and explain again. So that's why I'm coming back to explain it today. So, all right, let's move on. Simone, you are unmuted. So you see, that kind of question is wise, right? Shouldn't they use how much they have saved to now start covering the additional cost, right? To answer
Correct.
that, sometimes because you see that they've said they have huge savings here does not mean the savings can cover for this cost overrun. It may be that the project at this beginning was not even expensive. What they could have done here is about 99% or 98% of the total project cost. So whether they have saved over time does not mean it can cover up. So when you take a look at it, they went into what? The management reserve. Can you see the dotted line breaking into the management reserve? Now, to explain what the management reserve is all about, I'm going to explain two kinds of reserves. We have the contingency reserves and we have the management reserve. You and I that would have hands on the project, when we make our estimate from the beginning of the project, in the place where we need 5 men to get a job done, knowing that anything can go wrong, rather, we may want to estimate for 6 men. And that additional 1 man is for contingencies. I haven't seen that sometimes a workforce may not feel fine, a workforce may not come to work, but since we want to deliver the project on a given day, so we always have extra. These are buffers. So in place of, for instance, if it's a construction project and we are supposed to estimate for 10 bags of cement, knowing that there could be wastage, we now allot 1 more bag of cement and say it's 11. And we declare 11. So that contingency is already part of this dotted line. It's according to the policies you and I, the project management team, came up with, that for every estimate, we must have 10% for contingencies. And this kind of contingencies are done by the planners, the planning team. Now, management is not even aware that I, the project manager, and you, Simone, the project engineer, and Efe, the project quality engineer, and Lachima, who is the cost estimator, added 10% to every estimate we have made. Because we are the ones to do the job. We understand how things may go wrong. So we have padded it, and nobody knows we have done that. And we went on to declare the budget to them, $2 million. And our $2 million is now the BAC that you see here. Management looked at our cost engineer and said, I don't think this team had done something beautiful. Why not we? Instead of this $2 million, let's keep $200,000 somewhere. Peradventure, their speculations, their forecast, their plan is not realistic. And they now record cost overrun. So we would have money somewhere to give to them if they dare request, and we evaluate it and see that it is worth investing into. So we can have money to give to them. They now went on to keep 200,000 somewhere. So now that we have exhausted all what we have, Simone now told us that it's time to raise a change request because what we have in hand cannot cover what is left. Now, what we have in hand is what is called the estimate to complete. The estimate to complete the remaining portion of the job would not be enough to complete the project because we have spent more than what we planned for. So management already have $200,000, but they didn't tell us that they had that kind of money. That's why it was not declared in the BAC. The BAC only declared what we had. So management too had reserves on their own. That is the management reserve. We, the engineers, we, the ones that will do the job, we have embedded some 10% in every estimate of every single activity that we have planned for. And this is for what is called the known unknown. Known, like what you know. Unknown. You don't know when they will happen, but you know it may likely happen. And you know how the impact will be. This is because of the risk we have identified. When we get to the project risk management phase, we will talk about that. Because we have identified some risk, we have evaluated the risk. You know, risk is probability times impact, the likelihood of occurrence times the impact, if it may occur. So we have done our calculation, and then we saw that it may likely take 6-7% of the total estimate. That's why we have decided to be embedding certain things, certain percentage as the contingency reserve as we move on. We have gotten that done, buried in this black line. So this black line, which is the S-curve, has what? Both the legitimate estimate and the additional 10% buffer, which we have in there. Then these two kinds of reserve, management and contingency reserves, are the two types found on every project. Then the management reserve is for the unknown. They don't know when they will use it. They are not even expecting anything, any specific thing to go wrong, but the body language would be that they can't just put in all what they have on a project. It's good to have reserve. You never can tell. Peradventure, there is no reserve. And when we went over and beyond the cost baseline, the project could have been stagnated. You see the importance of the unknown? Now, we now raise the management, the change request, and requested for additional 10,000, 20,000 US dollars. They looked at our reason for escalating that. They sat down, looked at the cost and also the benefit. They thought about the scope. Should we remove that aspect of the work? Yeah, if we should remove it, it will be nice. But remember, that aspect of the work is what could have given us additional $20,000 per month when the project is complete. So they decided not to take it off. All right?
Now, Domingo. Oh, when I came the other day, you were sleeping.
So that is that. You see? Now, when you look at the diagram, you will see what I've not explained. The funding requirements. This funding requirement means that for every day, every single day, this is how much of the money that is required for to cover up activities. So once you have this funding requirement, why do you have this S-curve? And to show the funding requirement, so you can talk to the investors, so you can talk to the stakeholders, so they can understand how much is needed per day. Peradventure, like we said, the project is $2 million. And we came up with this S-curve, looking at the schedule, and the project was to be for 12 months. Because it's $2 million, the investors may be thinking that for every month, they are expected to spend maybe about 8% of the total cost. And if they keep spending that till the 12th month, they could have covered up the whole project. But when you now come up with this SCOF, they would see and understand that, okay, even from month 1, we are required to spend what? 60% of the total project cost. At month 2, we are spending 78%. It's showing. So it means that if you are expecting money, $8,000 per month, you may not be able to sponsor this project. Because the project wants to take 60%. And 60% of 120 of $2 million is how much? It's so much. That is about $120,000. Yeah. And that is very important. And so you have to make the man understand that you cannot fund this project with that money. You must ensure that you have 60% on the table from day one. You've told them that. They cannot see it. But there's what is called funding requirement reconciliation. The sponsors have told you, yeah, we can see the project requires us to drop 60% from month 1, another 18% month 2, that is 78%, but we do not have the money. Simone, can you replan? Lachima, can we replan to ensure that it's only 8% that the project will require of us every month? That is funding requirement reconciliation. You want to plan according to the fund that would be available in time. But do you know, there are some projects are sensitive that you cannot even achieve them with such a pattern. So in this case, you now will look at it and say, okay, it's not obtainable. So you are expecting 88%. So what do? You have to go for more money, go to the bank, let them give you money upfront. So as your money comes, you pay back in installments or in installments. That is why the funding requirement and the funding requirement reconciliation is so important. Does this look like what you do in your organization, Simone?
Yes, to a certain degree.
All right, so the picture is clear to you, right?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to add anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on. So we have the budget. Now we now know what the SCOV is. For some of you, I know you already know more than this, but we still do this in the project. So that's why I told you that at the end of this training, you can be applying the knowledge of a cost engineer or a cost estimator to your own project. Or for those that would want to work for other organizations, you can also do that for them. So lots of things we can do for this is what we balance. We put together to take care of cost engineering. So now we're going to go down. I told us about funding requirement, right? You can see the project funding requirement. It's especially the total funding requirement and the periodic funding requirements are derived from the cost baseline from the cost baseline. And the cost baseline will include project expenditure plus anticipated liabilities. The total funds required are those included in the cost baseline plus management reserve. This is so beautiful. I think I like to learn things like this. So I haven't gotten the budget declared. Everybody can now see the cost baseline. The SCOF is on the board. We can understand it over time. We now know if the sponsors have the money to fund the project, because there's how much they can achieve, there's how much your money can buy in time. This brings us to control costs. Now we want to start monitoring the status of the project so we can update the project budget and manage these changes to the baseline as we move on. And remember, if you record increase to the authorized budget, you must go back to perform integrated change control. That is to say, before you start implementing changes, before you start using more than what was planned for, you must ensure that you raise a change request and get authorization through the change approved change request. And that approved change request goes into what? The project cost management plan before execution, you see. And that project cost management plan is a subsidiary of the project management plan. So the project cost control will include influencing the factors that create changes to the authorized cost baseline. We must have some expertise to get things like this done. Ensuring that all change requests are acted on in a timely manner. You don't want things to go out of hand before you start actioning them. Managing the actual changes when and as they occur. Ensuring that the cost expenditures do not exceed the authorized funding. Yeah. Preventing unapproved changes, you see. That's what we do. And you remember that most of these requirements are gotten from stakeholders. So if there is a cost increase, you must ensure that you are reporting to the appropriate stakeholder. If you need a change, you ensure that you get buy-in from that stakeholder concerning the associated costs. And we act in this area to bring expected cost overrun within the acceptable limit. Yeah. So, what do we need to control cost? What do we need? We must see the plan. That is the project management plan. And in the project management plan, where are we going to? We are going to the project cost management plan. In the project management plan, we want to lay hands on it. We want to understand the policies. We want to understand the procedures. And we want to see the manual. We want to know who is in charge of the budget. We want to know what activity would be acted upon in time. That takes us to the cost baseline. And in the project management plan, we want to see the activity list. We want to see the activity requirement. We want to see the activity resource requirement. We want to see the activity cost requirements. Then we must see all the project documents, like the activity cost requirement. All these are project documents needed. We want to, because if we don't know what was planned for, we may not be able to control them. We wouldn't know when we are running out of funds. We wouldn't know when we are saving money. So the project funding requirements, and we still want to lay hands on the work performance data. How well are we doing? Are we buying less? Are we buying more? Are we achieving less with more money? Then we need the organizational process assets to manage that. We have tools for cost management. When you take a look at your project management software, you know that the costs are found there. The activity costs are found there. The activity durations are found there. The time frame are found there. The start time, the finish time, they are all found there. So also for financial appropriation, most organization has principles, they have policies, and they have ways of doing things that could have been helping them. And our own project management organization is not far from that. We too could have gotten some assets that would enable us manage cost and control cost. So what do? You can only manage fund based on expertise that you have. Who knows more can do better. That is why we have expert judgment. We consult one another. We interact with one another. We interview one another to ensure that knowledges are being invested to get cost controlled. Then this data that we are getting, we would analyze to know how behind we are. If our reserve is enough, then we will look at the to complete performance index. The to complete performance index, you're looking at the fund that is left as against the work that is remaining. Take a look at it. Then what do we get? Our output becomes the work performance information. The work performance information is just a report to say we are doing well, haven't analyzed the work performance data. We would have the work performance information. The work performance information is what we place in the work performance report that will be sent out to the stakeholders. Then we come up with new forecast. The new forecast is that if we continue like this, we will save $10 million at the end of the project. If we continue like this, we would be needing $2 million before the end of the project. That's a new forecast. You see, having looked at the historical trend, we cannot speculate the future. And sometimes somebody may say, why not we remove this aspect? I think it's the installation of these doors that is making us to spend more money. Why not we change the doors? So before you change the doors, you raise the change requests. That becomes an output, number 3 in the output, change request. And once the change requests have been approved, we go back to the project management plan and then we update it there. That's why we have the project management plan update. And all the documents therein will carry the new updates. Yeah. In this area, there are a lot of things we have to learn because this is where cost is saved. So this brings us in the expert judgment. What will the expert be doing? They would be analyzing variances, be conducting end value analysis, be coming up with forecast, be conducting financial analysis. So, having known that, let's go ahead and start learning these things. We have to learn the end value management. There is no interview, there's no success on the project that would not talk about end value. Like the name earned, what you have earned, the value of the work which you have earned. So you must manage the value of work earned over time. That is why we call it earned value management.